Hi, I'm Keith. Welcome and welcome back. Today we'll take a look. It was a month ago that we filmed this last time, how some of the plants that we planted in, how they're filling in, and how you'll see how those plants are making the landscape and the hardscaping look more dynamic. We'll also talk briefly about planting vegetables in a way that are fun and that are easier to grow, as well as give you fruit production over a longer period of time. So let's go take a look. So in the last video we talked about growing some melons and cucumbers along the top of the walls and the bottom of the wall, and how that's sort of an interesting dynamic, helps to tie the two areas together and makes it easier to pick some of the vegetables. For instance, right here we've got a spaghetti squash that's growing down the wall, and so it's a lot of fun to see these guys hanging from the wall. As you come down here, you can see more of the melons growing over the top of the wall here as well, and we have them growing at the bottom of the wall. And then I've got, combined with those, I have these bicolored petunias, alyssum, and I have some impatiens on their side. But what this helps to do is it helps to soften the bottom of the wall, and it actually gives you like a visual interest and defines the bottom of the wall as well. And over time we'll plant the entire bottom of the wall, and that'll have to carry your eye all the way around, and it really will highlight the hardscaping in the garden. But for now, it's a lot of fun to see these vegetables grow and trailing over. And in some ways, it's a little bit reminiscent of sort of those mythical hanging gardens of Babylon, where you had these terrace gardens and they grew lots of stuff. So it's this real sense of abundance that we have in the garden. Next to me, we got a squash growing. Again, we're kind of tying these two areas again. So squash with some ornamental flowers and stuff. And then we'll go take a look at the upper part of the garden. Take a look at this very simple layout of impatiens that's highlighting this area. Just a few, like 3 colors that I've used, all in that sort of pink and rose shade. And those are filling in really nicely and just giving this a lot more punch. Let's go take a look over here. We'll take a look at the upper part of the garden. So I think last time we had started this, we get up. So this is where our arbor is going to go. And so we actually just temporarily installed some of the posts, and we took them down because we've got some a little bit more designing to do. But it really gives the center part of the garden a lot of punch and interest. I mean, that's a very great stone bench, which you don't really notice. But with the addition of the arbor, which will run basically at the same shape as the bench, which is this curve, it's going to highlight the center of the garden, draw attention to that, and just give it a lot of punch. So we'll be sort of restarting that in probably 2 or 3 weeks, but I'm already very excited about it. It just looks great. Let's go take a look at the vegetables. So again, another sort of creative way to grow your plants. I mean, not everyone's going to have boulders sitting around in their garden, but these are sort of leftover rocks for future landscape projects that I may have. And what I did is I just stuck a couple of these tomato plants down in between these boulders. And what it does, the boulders actually help to conserve the moisture, suppress the weeds, really no weeds. And also, the top of these stones actually help as a means, as a canopy, if you will, for these tomato plants to grow. And so these are probably doing better than any of the tomato plants in the garden. And I think within about 2 weeks or so, we'll have a bunch of tomatoes. And really little care. I'm not having to tie them up in cages. They're just doing their thing. So just another example. And here we have an espalier multi-graft pear tree. Now we have this actually trained on a trellis, but if you wanted to, you could have this trained, well, a trellis like this is kind of nice, but if you wanted to do like a 3-foot trellis, it's just to help to support these arms that are growing here. Over time they'll get thicker and they won't hang down as much. You could always have stakes propping them up, but they'll get thicker and they'll eventually hold some of the fruit production. So there's 6 grafts on here. This year we just got 2 of the graft portions producing pears, the red pears over here, and we have the Bartletts over here. But in other years you'll have all of these producing pears on them. And so this is an easy way to pick the fruit. It also, because it's a multi-graft pear tree, it's going to give you that variety and also give you it over a longer period of time, because not all these are going to ripen at the same time. So lots of things you can do with these graft trees here. So let's turn around and we'll look at again. This is growing on the other side of the wall that we just came from. It's a bunch of melons and zucchinis and cucumbers that is giving me this really great green ground cover on the upper part of the wall, but it's actually trailing down these stone walls that I have. And again, you'll see some of the fruit starting to ripen on there, and we'll eventually take these boxes, vegetable boxes out of here, or planter boxes that we have out of here, so you'll actually see all of these plants growing over the edges. It'll be an interesting way, in a creative way, and in a visual way that I think is intriguing. So we'll take a look at the upper part of the garden. Let's go take a look at multi-graft apple tree I have up here. So this apple tree, which is already starting, some of the apples are already starting to ripen, and we're at the end of July. This had fruit on it until the beginning of January of last year. And so I basically could come out and pick apples almost every day for 7 months. That's kind of unbelievable, but I had it for like 7 months. I did have to go through a little bit of an effort to keep some of the rodents, the squirrels, and the rats off the tree by covering this thing and bird netting. But once I got that done, all I had to do was like pop my hand through the bird netting. It's easy to tear apart. You can cut a little hole, go in and grab an apple. Squirrels or the rats or whatever, they can't find those holes. And so it just kept all of this fruit protected. And if you come over and take a look, you can see just how many apples are growing. We've got Granny Smiths right here. This has got a huge amount of apples here. And we have Brayburn, which I think is down below here. Some of these other varieties, I think there's a Macintosh over there as well. And what I do is at the end of the year to keep this fruit tree, it's a semi-dwarf fruit tree, to keep this semi-dwarf tree, even that under control, is at the end of summer, sort of beginning of fall, before the leaves start turning color and losing leaves, before the nutrients of the leaves go down in the root system, I cut the tops of them off. Again, to bring down the canopy, but also it usurps some of the tree's energy, so the following season when it does grow, it won't grow so rapidly. And I've noticed by doing so, sometimes it actually helps to enhance the fruit production. So there's a bunch of benefits that are derived from that. So again, I love having this tree in my garden. And here's a plum tree. It's great. It's a Japanese plum, but once the fruit ripens within 2 weeks, you just get a ton of fruit, more than you ever use. And you have it in a short period of time. So what do you do with all this stuff? You can give it away to your neighbors, but we kind of grow these things for ourselves. So it's, again, you can even find plum trees, I believe, that are grafted, and you can have those over a longer period of time. You're not going to have them over as long a period of time as apples, but you'll still have, you could probably have them over maybe a month or two period or something like that. So let's swing around. We'll take a look at some of the vegetables on the upper part of the wall. Again, we have some spaghetti squash. These are the yellow squashes that are laying on the ground here. Everything's kind of trailed over this walkway. And again, this is a blanket of this green. These have really taken off and done a great job. We have cucumbers down, Armenian cucumbers down here on the ground. Kind of tiptoe over some of this area here. We have some watermelons that are forming here, and then also some marketplace cucumbers. As we walk down here further, there's just this whole bed of what I believe is giant, I think they're called giant, cantaloupe, and then Crenshaw melons. And we haven't quite figured out which is which, but we got a lot of them. And then there's a squash growing in here, and then we've got some watermelon over here as well. So it's just a lot of this stuff, and this gets about 7 hours of sun a day, which is adequate to grow these things. The more sun you get, the better. But they're doing really well, so it's fun to have this growing on the top here, and cascading over the walls as well. Let's take a look. You can see from this upper part of the garden, you can see the wall down below, and you get a better sense of what that combination of vegetables that I have growing, those trailing cucumbers and melons, combined with the bicolored petunias, how that's a really nice combination, and how that again softens the bottom of the wall, helps to lift the eye up. It's just a pleasing combination of plants that makes it both fun and interesting. So that concludes our fourth video. Again, if you like the video, click like. If you want to subscribe and get more of these, hit subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.